Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Peacemaker. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Immediately picking up with the events of last episode, we have the whole confrontation, somewhat confrontation between Adebayo and Murn, and then Hardcore walks up. I'm like, wait, it's Hardcore one too? But apparently not. She's just known for a while. I'd actually went back, and someone had theorized this before episode 4 came out, that because Murn had survived the explosion, it's like, oh, he must be a butterfly. I was like, it never even correlated in my head. It's like, he was point blank in front of that explosion. Not point blank, but he was pretty damn close. So I was like, right, Hardcore knows, and not only her, John Economos knows as well. He just puts his fingers in his ears, which we literally find out, it's like, no, he literally puts his fingers in his ear. So Hardcore's known at least since between episode 3 and 4, potentially about Murn, and now Adebayo's getting like the rundown of like, right, the fact is he survived the explosion. He has way more knowledge about the butterflies than anyone else should. So it's like, okay, so she's slowly processing all of this. Murn basically admits to, right, like, this is an alien invasion, and then one that was in Goth is their queen. And it's like, well, how do you know she was a she? Well, she has a vagina. It's like, well, what was her name? Well, we don't name her genitalia. No, what was it? It's like, well, you can't really, like, describe it in, say it in, like, the human tongue or whatever. Interesting timing, because obviously, it's the same absurdity you get in Resident Alien when it comes to the names and stuff. But, nevertheless, I thought it was interesting that he's just trying to stop an invasion, because, like, their planet is dying. So it is like, right, they try to find a new world. And when they came here, the queen is all about invading. So put herself in very high-ranking hosts. So the one inside of Murn is trying to stop all of this. That's what I thought was so interesting, because I'm like, yeah, like, why are you killing your own people? Because it's like, right, I need to. It's a very, like, I mean, obviously, like, Superman stopping, other Kryptonians from, like, trying to take over, like, stopping Zod and stuff like that from terraforming this into a new Krypton. Like, it's the same principle, except he's, like, actively helping kill his people. But it's like, yeah, this is the only way to stop them. So probably hopes that if he can wipe out I wonder, like, in the grand scheme of things, is he willing to sacrifice himself too? Because it seems like the ultimate plan is to wipe out their food supply. Like, if you're able to wipe out their food supply, which apparently is their cow, I guess it's not a literal cow, but maybe a metaphorical cow. But maybe the metaphorical cow will end up being a literal cow, because we find out later on it's a literal ranch that the amber is being made at. But it's their food supply. So if you wipe out their food supply, they'll starve and die, which he himself will too. But I think it's like, right, I am willing to die if it means saving this planet, because it's like, I have to stop my people. I don't know. Like, because it feels like if he wipes out the food supply, it not only stops him, it kills him as well. But so I just thought that was that was just kind of my thought process. I'm curious to see if that's really what that ends up being. But Murn does open up about, like, right, the man I'm in right now is not a good guy. Because even when he was talking to Locke at last episode, like, Locke was like, don't get it twisted. You've done some pretty bad stuff yourself. And so he's like, yeah, the guy I'm in is a murderer, but the thing is, the problem is, I wake up every day to his memories. I remember everything that he remembers. The fact is that even this man was capable of change, like who he's becoming right now. Maybe that's why, like, is that just the butterfly inside of Murn trying to be a better person? I'm trying to remember when that part of what episode that was. I think that was probably before John found out about the truth about Murn being a butterfly, but Murn, the butterfly would say Murn had the capability of change, and I took that away from him, like, because it doesn't seem like like, once you buried inside of them, there's no getting out. There's no, like, this is I mean, very much the comparison is very much like the Starro thing of, like, yeah, there's kind of no getting rid of that. You just kind of have to die. Like, once you're controlled, you're controlled. There's no snapping. At least based on what we saw in Suicide Squad, there was no, like, remedy or cure for that. So I think the same thing applies to this. They can't just, like, leave your body after. It's like, once they inhabit, because by inhabiting your body, I think they kill you, and they're basically reanimating a corpse in the process. I think that's maybe potentially how that works. Very, like, zombie, Walking Dead-ish. Which in totality, all of this is kind of crazy because it's like, right, now Vigilante and Peacemaker are the only ones who aren't in the know about everything. So, all while this is going down, I love the whole bit between Sophie and Peacemaker's dad, where he like says something super racist, and then she's like, "Oh yeah, like it looked." God, I forgot what it was now. It was basically like something. Oh, she's like, I think you got that translation wrong. It's actually that it looks like something took a shit on your head. And then I forgot what it was. Larry punctuated it was something. I was like, no, Larry, damn it, Larry. Even she calls him out for it. She's like, he's like, yeah, I know, I fucked that up that one up there, Sophie. I was like, that sucks. She came out on top this time. She hit him with that one-liner, bam, and you had to like add to it. You had to ad lib, and you screwed it up. That was Sophie's winning. Larry kind of took that from her. But nevertheless, it is kind of still that thing of like, yeah, you are letting a racist piece of shit go, but it's like, right, justice and getting the right person for the crimes. Now you've set him free, and now he's like, cool, I need to do what I should have done years ago. Kill my fucking son. Which I love that Peacemaker's like at that his buddy from the first episode is like, oh yeah, also it's like, yeah, my daughter needs someone to show up to school because the other kids like had someone show up and it was pretty cool and everything, and make the other kids feel bad and basically feel like they got shit on. We needed someone super cool. So what does he do? I wonder, is that like his moment of glory? Because I guess maybe that's the PG-13 story he can tell, because it's probably back when he was kind of more of a hero rather than the anti-hero, borderline villain where he's just straight up killing people. But I love that it's like, oh, like he talks about his exploit taking down Kite Man. I'm like, yeah, it's not just a news article. I don't know why, but I get super hyped about like Kite Man getting more attention. I don't know why. Like I said, don't ask me. I'm super hyped about the Kite Man attention he's getting, dude. I don't know why. I can't explain it why. But I love that it's like, oh, cool. Anyone got any questions? That first kid's like, yeah, but you said that thing, that Joel weighed 30 pounds. Wouldn't gravity eventually have taken out Kite Man? No. And then it's like, oh, have you met these other superheroes? Like, have you met the Flash? It's like, yeah, he was a dick. Wonder Woman? No, I didn't meet her, but like across, she gave me those eyes across the party, like she F me, wanting to F me eyes. And I was like, oh, do you know Becky Coolidge or something? I'm like, what kind of question is that? And she's like, oh man, I haven't seen her in 10 years. I was like, wait. And she's like, yeah, I think you might be my dad. It's like, oh, okay, children, that's enough. I'm like, oh, dad. I love that. It is kind of crazy to bring him there kind of as a show and tell type of thing, especially considering the cops are after him for granted, they hadn't pulled out the warrant and stuff yet, but still I was like, oh, this kind of crazy timing, so. But I do love that this a lot of this episode is Chris doing a lot of introspection, because I love that like Vigilante comes over, he's like, wait, how'd you know it was me knocking? He's like, because you knock in a very annoying way. He's like, oh, sorry about that. But it's like, yeah, he's like, he kind of feels the need to like talk about the fact is that it's like, oh, it's like, wait, you still got that golf thing? And even then you see like the insect, like you see the butterfly like waving to Vigilante to some extent. But I love that it's like, oh yeah, he's like, yeah, maybe it says a lot about me that I, to compensate for, feeling insecure about my masculinity, that I keep dangerous pets. I was like, whoa. And it's like, and I love that Vigilante's like, shut up about, he's like, you need to stop all this introspective stuff, I forgot he had said something else too. I forgot that was actually pretty Vigilante said something that was pretty interesting, and then like, it also got Peacemaker thinking like, wow, actually you're right about that. And then he kept talking. He's like, shut the fuck up. I'm talking. Listen. Because they were also going over the rules of like, because the queen, because we now know is the queen of the butterflies, she made a peace symbol in the jar. And you're like, wait, what? Which we know is total horse crap because you're the one leading this invasion. So I guess it was just she was trying to get him to let her go. But I love that it's like cool, like yes or no questions, and he's like, oh, what's your favorite color? It's like, dude, I just explained it. It's only yes or no. He's like, okay, and why are you starting? Why are you asking its favorite color, and why are you starting with teal? Well, first and foremost, like, don't you think it'd be really fascinating to know like an alien's favorite color, and if it was something like like something crazy and weird like teal? And he's like, all right, that is mildly interesting. But once again, he still does the whole, like, it's like, no, there's just 2 rules. He's like, dude, I can't keep up with it. It's just 2 fucking rules. It's either first rule or second. The first rule is like, it's a yes or no. 2, don't be a fucking dumbass. And he was like, well, how am I supposed to do the second one? How am I supposed to keep up with the second rule? And I think that led to him being like, yeah, like, what do you think that means, that you keep people around that can't talk back to you or something like that? And then that's what kind of got Chris being like, you're right, it is interesting that I'm surrounding myself with things that can't actually talk back to me in an angle. I'm like, once again, this is some very like psychological, introspective, profound thinking. I'm like, wow, he's going deep in this episode on that. I love that. But yeah, the cops are rolling up on his place. They couldn't get in touch with Peacemaker, and I love Hardcore throwing out there, call Vigilante. And it's like, yeah, that is a pretty safe bet. Calls Vigilante, and I love that. It's like, Vigilante, have you seen Peacemaker? Who's Vigilante? I don't know any Vigilante. Sounds Italian. And he's just like, what is it? It's like, the cops are on the way. You gotta go. So luckily they were able to sneak out. But the moment the cops get in there and tear the place apart, I was like, the fucking diary. And they find it too. I was like, oh boy. I was like, wait, was this the point? Because once again, Adebayo was supposed to put it in a place he wouldn't find it. So that's why I was like, oh, is he supposed to be a place where like he'd find it and be like, oh, I guess I lost this or something. I was like, that's why I was like, why put it somewhere he couldn't find it? I was like, I guess the whole point was eventually someone was going to come looking, and the point was for the diary to be found by someone else, but not him. Because you didn't want to take the chance he'd find it before anyone else. So cool. I love the whole them trying to sneak away thing. I love the whole like Vigilante was about to kill Sophie, and then you had Peacemaker be like, no, he's mouthing the word, she's a cop, and he's like, Vigilante, she's a cock? He's like, no, she's a cop, and he's like, almost like, fine, and he puts his blade away. But poor Sophie, like the moment she got infected, I was like, no! I was like, that's sad, because once again, it's pretty much the same thing as her being dead. I wasn't expecting that. I was like, that's interesting. I thought she was actually going to join forces with them, but I'm like, I'm an idiot. She's the queen. She's the one all about the invasion, so of course she wasn't going to work with Peacemaker in them. But I thought like, oh, she was going to help them out. I guess she was trying to like get to them first so she could kill them or either pump them for information about what they know. I mean, granted, she did that before. She was, as Goff, she was trying to, well, did a lot of torturing of Vigilante and not as much Peacemaker, but torturing Vigilante was supposed to be torturing Peacemaker. But I love that they're like running, and then like Vigilante turns around and knifes a dude, throws a knife, and it's like, dude, I told you don't kill anyone. He's like, at worst, he's paralyzed. And then like all of a sudden, like Eagly's helping out. He attacks one person. The second cop, if you pay attention, it looks like his head hit a rock. Like if you see him fall, there's like a rock behind his head. I was like, oh, that's not good. And then Eagly starts pecking out the third person. It looked like ripped out his eye or something. And just Vigilante be like, oh my god, Eagly's hardcore, dude. And they get surrounded. And then all of a sudden you had, well, they took down the other two, but then there was the final cop, and Locke came over and killed him. I was like, oh, man. And you could tell it bothered Chris a lot, especially as they were running away and turning around. And they watched Locke, one of the cops, she's like, no, please. But he's like, please, don't, please, bam, bam. I was like, holy, that's some psychopath shit that he's like, she's begging for her life and he's mocking her. That's twisted. He goes over and starts killing the other cops, and it bothers him so much because it's like one of those cops was unconscious. He was like, and that's the thing for Adrian. It's like, why are you like getting on like soft on me like this? We used to kill bad guys all the time and just, oh, we accidentally slipped up and killed the wrong person. Oh, who cares? Like, no, things have changed for him ever since killing Rick Flag. Like that's where it all really began, and now it's slowly, like, now that he's part of this team and stuff, like, because I guess he did a lot, well, apparently he joined forces with, like, Vigilante a little bit in the past, but I guess, like, a lot, maybe he's always done a lot of solo work, and now that he's part of a team, and just, it seems like, I mean, to be fair, this team needs him to be the killer that he's been in the past, but he's not the same person anymore. Like, specifically, that Rick Flag stuff triggered something in him, because I think it unlocked a lot of his insecurities and stuff like that, that everything he did was just so his, dad issues and stuff like that, which we see his dad in, like, Lock and Loading, I was like, the moment I saw the white hoods, I was like, oh boy. And I was like, all right, the hoods are designed like that because they're supposed to replicate him as the white dragon because his costume has the horns. I'm like, but I'm still like, oh God, it guts you a little bit seeing the hoods. You're like, I know you're a racist group and stuff like that. I know you're neo-Nazis. I get it. But I don't know, man. It's just seeing the visual of the hood. It guts you even more. Just to be like, Jesus Christ, this is really happening. It's like, man, your dad is a super white supremacist. Like I said, it's not like I needed that context, but man, it's just like seeing the hoods just makes it it slaps you over the face with it. Like, damn, it's just like, just makes you uncomfortable. Then there's a lady that I guess, well, he said, oh, she's just going to suck my dick. Like, whatever they did, seeing her just naked and then putting on the hood, you're just like, oh, God. And then him getting suited up. So there's the alien invasion that's happening. Plus, he's got to deal with his dad. That's interesting. Also, I love when Larry and Sophie came across Locke. And Locke was like, oh my God, like, no. It was a Caucasian male, stripes, red hair, fedora, and a red tie. I was like, wait, I had to rewind when he was saying that. I was like, wait, is that the mascot from McDonald's? I was about to say Burger King, Jesus. McDonald's? And then if I just let the episode play, Larry was immediately like, I think he was talking about the Hamburglar, and then Sophie's like, the mascot from McDonald's? And he's like, yeah. I was like, if I just let the episode played, I would have, because I didn't remember his name. It's interesting timing too, because I want to say it was like either this week's podcast or last week's RT podcast, Rooster T podcast, that they talked about like McDonald's. Well, McDonald's has been a part of the conversation, I think, last week's and this week's episode, but I can't remember which one they referenced the mascots. I think they were specifically talking about the purple one. I think his name is Grimace. I could not remember their names. That's why I'm glad they actually said the hamburger. I could not remember that dude's name. But yeah, I was like, oh, that's interesting. So like Larry is like, I think he's fucking with us. Either he's a complete another idiot or he's fucking with us. Which I even love the end credits. It's him like, that's some psychopath shit. Like, showed you like he's a terrible human being. That he was just kind of like, all right, oh, come on, sad face. And he was like, how was that? And he's talking to the dead body. He's laughing. He's like, look at you. He's like, all right. He's slapping himself. All right. And laughing. I'm like, that's some psychotic shit. I feel so bad for Christopher Heyerdahl, like the actor who plays him. I didn't realize he was in the opening until, like, I guess I noticed the cop before, but I never looked and actually noticed that it was him. I was like, oh, you were there the entire time. I just never noticed. But he always plays some very psychotic characters. I was like, he kind of gets typecast a little bit. But that Sophie thing hits even harder when Larry's like being so concerned for her and everything, and she's like, hey, this human was very fond of you, which is like, oh, that's kind of heartbreaking. And he is like, wait, what? And then she's trying to smile towards him, and it's just like weird and awkward. And she's like, oh, like people never realize how difficult like smiling is. It's different for every person, and like you have to relearn it every time you go into a new body. So, and then that whole, I was so curious what was going to happen with the diary situation, because like the thing is that what's his face, Locke ended up getting it, and he ended up putting it in his drawer. So I'm like, okay, so that's out of play for now. And because I guess Locke had contacted Murn, and so when they actually do show up, and it's like, oh, you have a diary, and then like Adebayo's like, fuck, and then Murn's like, what was that about? She's like, nothing, sir. I'm like, oh, dude, because she didn't know it was going to come into play like this. But then like you had Peacemaker be like, I don't have a diary. Like, I use a notepad at best. You know, even that I don't really use. So, but obviously for him, it's like, all right, Goff got out and he's in. And then, like, you have Vigilante be like, oh, it's in that. And he's like, no, you don't say that word. He's like, what? Asian. It's like, no, I think she is. He's like, no, you don't say it. It's like, why not? He's like, I don't know. It's just one of those things you don't say. And then it's like, because that word makes people feel like other. And it's just like, and he's kind of being like, okay, sure, you want to use the woke terms and blah, 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 blah. And Adebayo's like, oh, yeah, so sorry for a straight white male having to, after coming out of prison, having to use a different word to describe someone. He's like, I said fine, didn't I? Which I should also talk about that. I love that bit in a car where it's like, he's trying to call the others hardcore. And he's like, no. He's like, I'm going to get rid of your phone Peacemaker, see, because this way they can't track us. See, you should be thanking me for saving our lives. That phone was secure. They wouldn't have been able to track you. He was like, oh, yeah, that was a big fuck up on my part. I'm really sorry about that. He's like, there were irreplaceable cute pictures of Eagly up there. They're irreplaceable. He's like, oh, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, Eagly. What about the cloud? He's like, I don't know about the fucking cloud. All that happened while I was in prison. People kept talking about the cloud and this and that. He's like, oh, yeah. Like, you ever notice? He's like, oh, that angry looks on your face. I'm like, I love that because Vigilante has no empathy. A lot of that stuff kind of goes over his head. He's just kind of like, that's why he has to ask sometimes, are you actually angry at me? Because he doesn't know emotion, so he can't read people. But he's like, oh yeah, like anytime you're kind of angry, your face makes all these different faces and stuff like that. So, nevertheless, the sad thing is that, yes, he kept Goff and they're like pissed at him, but then he's like, okay, so what's going on? Why does it feel like you guys aren't telling me anything? And then it's just kind of like silence, and he's like, and that's the heartbreaking thing. He's like, oh, I thought we were supposed to be a fucking team. It's like, yeah, after they had their romp and their adventures last episode, I even love John's like, yeah, when I saved you guys from that gorilla. And Hardcore's like, man, you were milking your 15 minutes of fame, weren't you? He really is. He's never going to let you guys forget that he chainsawed a gorilla saving your lives. He's never going to let you forget that because it's the highlight of his life. I mean, because I love that he's not even talking about Judo Master anymore. I guess because Judo Master did escape and then like, super kicked him in the chest. So it's kind of like, yeah, that I don't have that victory, but this is a victory I can hand, like, because Judo Master we captured, this gorilla I chainsawed and killed, so I think that victory like one-ups Judo Master anyway. So either way, you can tell Adebayo feels guilty in many regards. One, it's the whole thing about the diary, so there's that. And especially because Chris is looking at her, because they just had that heart-to-heart moment last episode, like, yo, you're actually like the only like real friend I have and stuff like that. I guess, you know, at least, you know, that he acknowledges, because it's like, yeah, Vigilante's like, oh, we're best friends. It's like, because that's how he was able to get into his phone. It's like, wait, how'd you know my password? I know my own fucking birthday. It's like, oh, God, he is obsessed with Peacemaker. I love it, because he's like, yeah, we're besties and stuff like that. It's a one-sided best friendship. BFF situation, but like legitimately he does like Adebayo, and he feels like Adebayo because she's the one person that's like, no, like I recognize the good person that's in you too. So obviously I love that like scene of Sophie summoning in her army. I was like, oh, you're going to possess a whole bunch of people. I was like, are you about to go do what? Goes in the police station, everybody gets it, even Larry. And I thought, honestly, the music, that song, I've never heard that song, but it was a perfect song to match with the scene. Like, I love that. Like, oh, there's this creepy and kind of unnerving part of the episode where, like, all of them are walking together and their song's still playing, and they're all cracking a smile, like, blood around their mouths from all being infected. And I'm like, dude, because it wasn't just all the it was all the inmates there, it was also all the cops. So it's like, luckily White Dragon got out when he did, because if he didn't, he'd be infected right now. So it's like, oh man, it's funny how that worked out, because obviously some of the people amongst the group are his people. So, but it's like, yeah, it's like I said, got to deal with his dad and a full-scale invasion. So Adebayo is feeling conflicted, because it's like, right, at the time she was like, yeah, that diary's not in place, so it's fine. But she's like, yeah, there's this big goofball, like, doofus that I work with that I feel like I betrayed him. Now it's like, right, like, what does she do? Because there's stuff now that even her mom doesn't know, that she doesn't know about Murn being a butterfly and all that. Because it's like, right, we can't tell Amanda Waller everything, because we can't trust her. So it's like, right, does she betray the team, or does she betray her mom? But Kia's like, no, like, forget that. We can walk away from all this. She's like, yeah, but what about the bills? We'll find a way. I'll borrow from my sister. We'll go back to Gotham. I was like, the moment they dropped out, I was like, do you want to... once again, I can't help it. Do you really want to go back to Gotham? I don't know, man. Gotham's rough. We've seen too many instances of just like how rough things can be. I mean, especially with the caliber of villains. Like, we don't know what supervillain is loose right now in Gotham. And once again, Gotham is its own breed of monsters. Like, its supervillains are their own special breed of psychopaths in Gotham. And it's just like, do you really want to go back to... I mean, who knows? Maybe Gotham's on the up and up in this continuity. I doubt it, because it just never feels like... I don't know, maybe there's some comic book continuity where, man, Gotham's great. Like, I don't know, man. Everything I ever see of Gotham's just like, you know, Gotham's not great. It seems like the one city in the... Like, out of any city in the DC universe, it's always the number one on my list of, like, stay the fuck away from Gotham. I mean, don't get me twisted, like, every other city, like Metropolis, you know, you got Superman going up against villains, there's going to be mass destruction and stuff like that, especially go by Man of Steel standards, but still, like, I don't know, man, like I said, Gotham's its own beast, so, like, I was like, I was about to say, because I know the character of Adebayo, I believe, like, during DC Fandom, or maybe it was just me reading up on an article, because I could have sworn, I think Adebayo is a original character. She's not from the comics. I don't know if her wife is, like, the same, or could she be someone from the comics or not. Either way. But, I thought it was a really sweet moment where we see Harcourt putting the dove of peace on one of the guns. I was like, oh, that's super sweet. He's like, whoa, what is this? She's like, yeah, this is this particular gun, and I put a dove of peace on. He's like, the tail's the wrong way. But he's like, yeah, thank you, yeah, she's like, also, like, I'm sorry for calling you a piece of shit. You're, like, 85% a shitty person, but the other bits of you are good. She's like, good night, Chris. And he's like, good night. And she's like, Amelia. And he's like, good night, Amelia. I'm like, oh, that is really sweet. And then he gets on the piano and starts playing. And I was like, oh, that's really sweet. I wonder, was that also just to showcase, like, no, like, John Cena can do this, but also... I'm assuming, like, just the fact that he's playing it, like, I think, because he recently thought about his brother, and I think that's what probably potentially triggered that. I don't remember which one. Was that just a straight-up memory, like, on Chris's part, or was that something from his dad thinking about what happened? Because we get a little tiny bit more of that memory where, like, his brother's dying. He's like, what did you do? And then Chris's hands are bloody. Like, I'm assuming, like, either his dad thought his brother was going to kill him, because I figured it was like a thing of like, oh, they were probably like pitted against each other, and his dad was like, how did you kill your brother? Like, either like it was like, no, your brother was supposed to kill you, or it was just kind of like, right, we were raised a certain way, they had a disagreement, and like their dad made them into killers. Definitely made him into one. So maybe in that moment he just lost control, and that because it seemed like his like I said, it seemed like his brother was having a seizure. So I think like maybe his brother had like an underlying condition that maybe they weren't aware of, and that it kicked in when during their fight. But all while this is going on, Vigilante comes in. I thought he was going to say something like crazy or something. But he's like, I thought you didn't have a diary. And then they proceed to blast like that all over the TV. Now, this is where my question comes up. So obviously, like, it benefits them because it's like, cool, we want to take down Peacemaker because we know what you're up to. You're trying to kill all of us, yada, yada, yada. Because he had made the point of, like, he didn't want to kill anymore, but Amelia's like, well, we have to do this. And he was like, it's kind of not really the time. He's like, no. I don't mind killing aliens and bugs and stuff like that, but he's like, I don't want to kill anymore. Like, having the Dove of Peace was just an excuse because I didn't want to admit the fact is I straight up just don't want to kill people anymore. But I can make an exception when it comes to these alien bugs. But other than that, though, there is the whole, and going back to it, the diary and stuff. So, them making Peacemaker out to be a national threat, like, oh, he's killed all these people, the thing that went down in the factory, sure. But I'm curious in the long, like, because at first I was about to say, there's no way, because I was wondering, because, like, based on what the guy was reading, he was like, oh, this is some pretty effed up stuff. So, I was wondering, when this was all said and done, was Amanda Waller trying to get him thrown in jail. She was hoping that eventually, like, when this is all said and done, probably the entire team, but maybe specifically Peacemaker was going to be her, he was going to be her scapegoat for, like, all this stuff. Because, like, rather than letting out, like, oh, there was an alien invasion, we're just going to be like, all this death, she's going to put it on Peacemaker. Now, why specifically him? Because, like, that's why she needed him. It's like, cool, you're a loyal soldier that won't ask questions, so I'm going to get you to be a part of this team and do all this without question. So maybe that's all it was. And just like, right, we need a fall guy, so I'm going to let it be you. Because there's no way there's anything in that journal that says anything about the people dead at the factory. Like, because Adebayo's been sitting on that diary for a while, so I think they used it to their advantage, but maybe that's what this was always meant to do. It was meant to make Vigilante, like, because at least based on what that cop was almost looking at, like, oh, there's some psychotic shit in this diary. So it seems like maybe that was always going to be the purpose of it. Maybe, I don't know. But now the butterflies are able to use it to their advantage, because it's like, cool, now we can say, like, every police station around will be looking for Peacemaker. Cool. So now he's nationally known. Like, this is a federal thing. Like, every police station is going to be looking for him. So granted, yes, that's the butterflies doing their thing, but Adebayo, like, planting that diary just kind of gave them more ammunition, I think. But I'm curious, like, what role was it initially supposed to play? Like, if it was supposed to play, what I'm thinking is. Because for him not to find it, it was meant to be someone else to find it. So, like, the police or something, like, if they go searching, they'd have all they need to take Peacemaker down. Because I'm wondering if, like, Waller was thinking, like, right, eventually put him in a position where the cops would end up killing him, finding the diary after the fact, and then it's like, yeah, like, we got our guy, all these terrible things that happened, they could pin, like, all this, like, covert government stuff of killing these people who are infected with butterflies, we could lay it on him. Or there's other, like, stuff that went down that the diary's meant to pin on him. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. I believe there's only 2 episodes left of the season, so I'm excited to see where everything takes us, because there's a lot to go through these next 2 episodes. It's going to be so interesting to see where all of it ends up taking us. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.